the issue is all about how do we address the market. So it is clear that we don't have this financing available. So what do we do as Africans, as Ugandans, right?
Yeah.
And I want to commend the government of Uganda for the policy measures that it has taken to enable our projects to be bankable. One of the issues in the concept note I read was that we don't have bankable projects in Africa. And I somewhat disagree. I think the projects are bankable if we can only do more in terms of sensitizing both the private sector and the government sector players because the way it has to be looked at is on a much longer term. You talk about long-term financing. I think the longest term for financing would be 10 years. Yeah, that maybe you can get from. I'm glad to be supported here by EADB, who were our first financiers, and then later UDC. But in order for me to explain this, I think I'll just give you a bit of our situation and our testimony. So East African Medical Vitals, after doing a comprehensive feasibility study, realized that government was a big player in terms of our market. So before we even, and again, remember I talked about the market. You must start with the market. You cannot put up, we realized that we could not put up this factory without having some level of assurance of a market, right?
Yes.
So the government of Uganda, we lobbied them, and following examples like CIPLA, they gave us an offtake agreement for us to start. EADB could not give us money, and we'll go into how to address the issue of what rate we got the money at and the tenor after. But I'm just trying to give you an example. That could not give us money without that assurance that government was going to buy from us. Same thing with UDC. So now let's look at, and you're looking at a project of we are currently the first surgical gloves manufacturer in the whole of Africa. But this is possible because of government policies and incentives to enable this, right? I'm yet to come to your point on how we sort out the market. So then look at an example of East African Medical Vitals, which we are currently importing 90% of our raw materials from overseas. But what are we importing? We are importing latex. Latex is made from rubber trees.
Sure.
But nobody is going to invest in rubber tree commercial planting and latex manufacturing without there being a factory to consume that latex. So that's how you're addressing the market. And the rubber tree, once planted here, takes 5 years before it can give you latex for another 20 years. So you can see that the game that we're supposed to be playing in Africa is a long-term game. And I want to say that for me, the issue is we already have financing that's coming in to support our raw material production. Yeah. What we need now is to sensitize and encourage all the stakeholders to appreciate the need for us to find financing within ourselves. Because the reason these DFIs are giving you financing for raw material extraction is because the money is coming from somewhere, and they are trying to make sure you're producing a reliable, sustainably, raw material so that they can extract and use and then sell the goods back to you.
Yeah, sure.
So for us, what we have to do is pick on some of the strategies that Dr. Birungi spoke on. Start with a small amount to increase the availability of our funding at the right rate. I believe that will trigger a response from the DFIs, because this is an issue of the market again.
Yeah. Demand
and supply. Once they see that we are running to where these sources are, say if they funded UDC, they will adjust their rates and their tenors. Why is tenor very important when you talk about financing? You have had our horizon. For us to be completely independent of government support, it will require a horizon of about maybe 15 years. Because we started production in 2021, and we have just broken even now in 2025. So what does that tell you? It tells you that we need that patient capital. So for me, I think where I'm coming from is there is this gospel about the value of government initiatives now, and you must applaud the government of Uganda. For example, we have competitive power now. With our struggles in the industrial park, we are struggling in the dust, but we are pushing and we are producing products. Okay. So we see the government's efforts in infrastructure, in energy. The only piece that's missing now is simply to sort out the financing issue.
Financing. Yeah. And you actually mentioned something very important. There is the rate, there is the tenor. And I want to pick up from the conversation about rates to go to Mr. Deo Sande from the Bank of Uganda, that the current high interest rates for Uganda are becoming a deterrent to the manufacturing sector. Like you've clearly seen Brian explaining, you start manufacturing in 2021, you only break even in 2025, meaning if you have to service a loan with a very high interest rate, that becomes a charge on your company. I would ask you, what are you doing about this as the central bank?
So, thank you very much for this invitation. I start off by sending the apologies from the Deputy Governor. Currently, at the moment, we have a commercial engagement that we're hosting the commercial region right now. So, the Governor is involved in this whole activity. However, let's start off from the perspective, why are interest rates high in Uganda? Mm-hmm. So that's what you're asking practically. So the first question is, we have a fundamental question. We have done some research, and we speak of around close to, the banks highlight the fact that the cost of capital is one of their biggest constraints. So at the moment, we're looking at banks saying an average of around 68% of their costs are related to the cost of capital. So as an institution, what is the Bank of Uganda doing? Mm-hmm. So the first thing we're trying to do, part of this story is speaks to structural kind of questions. So we started from the perspective we're trying to have a national switch. And in this national switch, we're trying to make the cost of payments in the system low, right? So there's also the other element the question of information asymmetry. This is about how much does the bank know of you as an individual. So the bank has gone ahead. We have established a number of credit reference bureaus. So the banks complain that they don't know their customers. Okay? They don't know their customers. So as the bank is aiming at reducing that information asymmetry. Yeah. So in reducing the information asymmetry, it's expected that the customers or the banks will also know their customers. In so doing, our biggest hindrance is the element of non-performing loans. So because of non-performing loans, the banks feel they have probably given people money that they don't know that much. So part of the story is that the bank has established that, is working towards improving information asymmetry, reducing that as much as possible. The other aspect that the bank has engaged so much is the element of financial inclusion. We as an institution, we have gone out big time. We are trying to get everybody to get banked. So as an institution, we're encouraging people to open bank accounts with an aim at some point that we shall have a critical amount of people so that they can be part of this whole story. The other question is that in this whole space, as an institution, the bank has also been able to perform well. For instance, from the perspective of macroeconomic stability, our shilling has performed in the last 10 years has been the best performing currency across the whole of Africa
Sure, sure.
in the last 10 years. So part of the story is strong macro conditions were financial stability. However, in all this whole thing, we have also looked at the perspective that long-term credit is a big problem, as highlighted by my previous speaker. In that spirit, the bank there's a project that they've developed there's a whole new department that is supposed to address this question. So we have what we call the Financial Sector Development Department that is supposed to address the question of why do we have, in the space of long-term funding, why are we having problems in that space? So part of the proposals are in the spirit of, I could say, enabling the financial sector as a whole to be in position to create that long-term, the 10, 15 years. So we're looking at pension sector reforms. So part of the people in this are the Capital Markets Authority, our Investment Authority, all the other stakeholders, the stock exchange individuals. So there's a whole group that is supposed to work in this, but the whole aim is how do we reduce the cost of capital.
Sure.
So that's where the bank is coming. It's coming from that overall, overarching kind of, and in terms of our performance as a country, we're fared quite well in ABSA's Financial Development Index. We're the third, just behind the Mauritius and South Africa. So that tells you we're playing beyond our league. So the bank and the governor as a whole is so passionate about this. And I think with the time, with there are a lot of initiatives that are trying to address the structural issues.
Okay.
What are the structural issues? And that's part of the story.
All right, definitely. I'll continue with you. And as I get to speak to Mr. Asira from the East African Development Bank, I also kindly request to have Mr. Peter Mramida, who is the Director Investment Promotion and Business Development from the Uganda Investment Authority. Mr. Peter Mramida, wherever you are, please. Kindly requesting to have you on the panel as well, because there is no way we would be talking manufacturing when we don't have, when we can't talk about the industrial parks, for example, in Uganda that have shown tremendous development. Also having, earlier we were talking about the women, and we have the first women's industrial park in Boyikwe, particularly. But let me get to Mr. Deo Sande. I beg your pardon, to Mr. Andrew Asira from the East African Development Bank. How do we get to have DFIs, de-risk manufacturing projects, especially to be able to attract private capital? Because we can always back the government, but that capital may not always be adequate. That the private sector, also the private capital needs to be coming through. But how do we get to de-risk manufacturing to attract that capital as well into the portfolio?
Thank you. DFIs have a big
If you could draw the microphone a little closer, please. Just closer to yourself, yeah.
DFIs have a very big role to play in terms of de-risking manufacturing projects. And in the interest of time, I would like to very briefly just cover 5 aspects that I think DFIs could be very, very helpful in de-risking manufacturing projects. The first one is being able to provide inexpensive, long-term, patient capital. I'm careful about using the word low interest rates, and I'm calling it inexpensive. If we can manage to bring that interest rates down and be able to provide long-term funding, I think we will have been able to de-risk manufacturing projects in terms of making them more economically viable and being able to attract other lenders. At the East African Development Bank, towards the tail end of last year, we got a rating of A by S&P. This is now the most highly rated institution in the region, more rated than the member states that are the shareholders. What does this mean for us? What it means is that we are now able to negotiate lines of credit with our funders that enable us to attract capital at a lower interest rate. And effectively, our customers will benefit from those low interest rates and on a longer term basis. And therefore, if you have a project and you would like to discuss funding, please speak to us. At this moment, if you allow me very quickly just to ask the country manager for Uganda, Mr. Francis Ogwang, wherever you are, just stand up so that this is the go-to man if you're in Uganda. Country manager Uganda, Mr. Francis Ogwang. We are highly liquid. We are now transforming the bank. We're able to do longer-term tenors. We used to do in the past 7, 8 years. We're now stretching to 10, 12. Let's talk when you have a project that requires funding. That's one aspect. The second aspect that we could do is to provide credit risk guarantees so that we can probably guarantee payments guarantee the risk of default by payments, by suppliers, off-taker risk. That's one other thing we can do in terms of providing guarantees, and so many other aspects of credit guarantees. The third one is that at the East African Development Bank, we're able to provide venture capital. We are able to take equity stakes in well-structured manufacturing entities. Speak to us. When we do take such a stake, we improve the attractiveness of your investment to other lenders. It's a signature for decency that this is a good project. How do we get good projects of the manufacturing sector? And maybe, just maybe, the people we need to be addressing are the importers. Why do they address as opposed to manufacture locally? Is it a product that can be manufactured locally? Now, this is where I think DFIs can come in and help the people who like to come up with these projects in terms of feasibility studies. Very, very expensive. Structuring, financial modeling. That's one space that DFIs can play in to improve bankability of projects. There are also other important aspects of those projects. Today, we talk about the environment issues, the social issues, the governance issues, ESG. Being able to develop an ESG framework for a project is very, very important, but also very, very expensive. And I think DFIs have a big role to play in that space in terms of providing technical assistance. Today, we are talking about climate finance. And there are projects, manufacturing projects, that can be able to measure the carbon footprint of those projects can be measured. What DFIs can do will be to support the development of carbon markets in the region, so that if a project is carbon efficient, if a project is supporting initiatives towards net zero, there's an exchange program where that project can derive value. Very lastly for me, we need to critically think about the operating environment. When Dr. Birungi was talking about money going into high-rise buildings where only the first 3 floors are occupied and the rest are empty, and how do we get that money into manufacturing? It just tickled my thinking that there must be something very wrong that's making manufacturing very difficult and making these other investments that may not be very viable not as attractive. And yet, it's in the manufacturing sector that we are going to create the much needed jobs for the young people that are coming out of our educational institutions every year. So, 2 aspects of the business operating environment. One is infrastructure. DFIs have a big role in supporting infrastructure, which in turn is catalytic to the manufacturing enterprises.
Sure.
I'm talking about roads, I'm talking about railway, I'm talking about energy, clean energy, I'm talking about power, right from generation to transmission to distribution. DFIs have a very big role in creating that enabling environment by funding infrastructure that catalyzes manufacturing enterprises. And very, very lastly, under operating environment, a role that I see DFI is playing could be supporting these discussions, the advocacy, being able to promote discussions where we bring together government agencies, we bring together the private sector, we bring together various players in order to just sit and talk and discuss what are the things that are paining manufacturers and how can we make it more interesting for people to get into manufacturing.
Okay.
In my view, those are the aspects that I think DFIs need to be focusing on to catalyze manufacturing enterprises.
Thank you very much. You actually read my mind when it came to infrastructure, because that remains one of the biggest challenges when it comes to operational costs for the manufacturers. Let me get to the Uganda Investment Authority. And there's been establishment of a number of industrial parks, to bolster manufacturing, especially for Uganda's case that decided to take on import substitution and export promotion. Where are the success points so far, and what are the challenges when it comes to manufacturing, as envisaged with the construction of these industrial parks?
Thank you very much. Just to first of all recognize the key investors today in the room, to first of all thank you for arranging this forum, Uganda Development Corporation and the fraternity at the Ministry of Trade. I see roofings in the room, Mr. Lalani and my colleague Brian. Thank you for spending the time. Just as an introduction to what Uganda Investment Authority does, it is basically twofold. On one hand, you have investment attraction, where it is the mandate of the institution to attract and ensure that the investors, wherever they are, local or foreign, find home in Uganda. And we are saying to be able to transform and be a transformative economy, we need to look at industrialization. So this topic is very relevant. The other hand of the institution takes charge of investor experience. What my colleagues have been discussing here is investment experience, to ensure that, be it on the scale of inclusivity, making sure that there is available resources, available services across all institutions ready and there. We have the one-stop center where we have assembled over 25 other agencies of government under one roof. And the primary role there is to ensure that the cost of doing business is processes. It means that you are trying to ensure that you shorten the time and the processing of things that are supposed to be done. Take an example of how long does land take to be acquired? How long does an investor take to identify the appropriate piece of land where he needs to do or what she needs to do? It means that the investment authority, working with other agencies of government, will ensure that we have already pieces of land. These have been identified and been gazetted for purposes of industrialization. Our next step will be to comb through the whole country, working with the local government, and do a thorough audit of understanding where land is not being put to full use. Working with the government, the Ministry of Land, the Ministries of Local Government, and the Ministries of Trade and Finance, this is urgent because that will show us exactly a blood picture of the land that we have available for industrialization. Namambe is not enough. It is full as I speak. Mbale is full. Kapeka is full. Soroti is going to be full soon. The industrial parks that we've been gazetting for the last 2 years for Kasese, Bunagana, and Kisoro require very much high investment in terms of feasibility. So when you talk about the challenges that we have, these are challenges, but it requires very deliberate effort, as Mr. Brian Kabria said, in terms of ensuring that we are making the right steps in the right direction and at the right time. Finally, around the challenges, as far as investment authority is concerned, we would like to take a look at what the neighbors are doing. So we would like to see us transition what we call the traders or the kind of businessmen who are involved, yes, in value addition, but not to the level of manufacturing, so that we can handhold them and give them, yes, the space, but also link them up to the appropriate other investors that have got scale and have got the experience to ensure that they are moving in the right direction.
Okay.
Twinning to that is the issue of consistency in collaboration. And that I must emphasize that forums that like this allow us to ensure that we are talking the same language consistently and over time. It is not something that has to be done only once a year. It is something that we need deliberate actions to be made out of this forum, for example. What do we agree? What do we do after tomorrow? So that then we are very focused on the steps we agree from this forum, and we are taking them forward in the spirit of teamwork as far as Team Uganda is concerned. I submit.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. And I will request our technical team to just avail us a handheld mic. I will take about 3, ideas from the plenary, but as the technical team gets us that, I want to get back to Brian on just one issue, because manufacturing viability is very dependent on the stable, affordable utilities. And I'm wondering what's most crippling for you as a manufacturer, the most crippling structural deficiency that poses the greatest recurring threat to your operational output as a manufacturer? You can.
Yes, thank you for that question, Mildred. I would say from our experience in the industrial park, I would say maybe it's just the intermittent supplies of power. I think power goes off quite a bit, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. My uncle Sikanda would agree with me. Another issue maybe that has been plaguing us is reliability of water supply. And of course, this usually is caused by the infrastructure works that are already happening. And we have engaged with UEGCL on the project for 5 cents per kilowatt hour. But for me, I think all those, entrepreneurs, we are built a bit differently. It is crazy for someone to go who has been importing their products and selling reliably. They know, for them to have a mindset change, to go and say, now let me try manufacturing. Yeah. So for me, those challenges from where we stand, they are real, but they are not as big a challenge as the financing issue. Yeah. Okay. So those we can struggle with as entrepreneurs. We can strap up our boots. With the policy issues, the policy advantages we have as being local manufacturers in the country. We believe we can withstand those, and those with a better contribution to our national GDP and our budget, I believe can be solved. But the biggest issue we have is on financing.
Okay.
And
The elephant in the room is the financing. The others can be the tail. You know,
the
the tail of the elephant.
we're already addressing. We struggle. The roads are not perfect. You cut off my water, I will complain.
Yeah.
And people are working. These people in National Water and Sewerage Corporation and UEDCL, they are working. They do well. But the only missing piece in Uganda right now, I believe, is on financing.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Asira, you did mention the issue of energy, unreliable energy. The high logistic costs also are one of those that consistently are cited as the single biggest constraints when it comes to East Africa's manufacturing, for example. I'm wondering whether, as the East African Development Bank, you are having some, apart from the direct project financing, I'm wondering whether you have some strategic framework when it comes to investing in facilitating some kind of shared infrastructure, whether it is energy, whether it comes to issues of transportation and logistics, something that is joint, as the saying is, if you want to go far, you walk together.
Thank you. I think that resonates very well with the conference and discussion we had in Joburg last month under the framework of AUDA Nepal, in terms of what are the infrastructure projects that we should be focusing on across Africa. And in East Africa, I would not like to mention at this stage, but there are quite a number of projects that we're looking at, integration. And there are a number of sources of energy across East Africa. So you've got hydro energy, you've got wind energy, you've got, I leave solar energy out for now, you've got geothermal, and very many others. And some sources of energy are much cheaper than others. But so you will have a situation where, for example, in Tanzania, there is cheaper hydro energy, which at some point is not being utilized. But you may find in Kenya, you have expensive geothermal energy being used, or at some point in Uganda, you've got much more expensive HFO being used. Now, how do we create a transmission ring, call it Lake Victoria transmission ring, whereby we fund the establishment of power transmission lines that allow the countries to tap into cheaper sources of power at any one particular point. So that's a point of discussion among the multilateral financial institutions across Africa, and more specific to East Africa, those projects have been identified. And I think if we can crack issues to do with the cost of energy, we will, in a large way, have cracked the challenge around manufacturing.
Okay, definitely. I'll be getting back to the team, especially from Bank of Uganda and Uganda Investment Authority. I am wondering if we have some 2-3 burning issues that the plenary would want to bring on board so we can bolster manufacturing. Like Brian did clearly say, the biggest elephant in the room, capital. The others can be the tail and the ears. You know, they're much smaller than the elephant itself. Do we have any? Okay, we have one right at the back. Your name, sir, and as briefly as possible, get your question or your deliberation across.
Thank you. Thank you to the organizers of this. Emmanuel Emasit is my name. I work for Vantage Management Consult. I have 2 questions. One goes to the gentleman from Medical Vitals, where you say you need latex to process the gloves. I don't know whether you have gone ahead to encourage Ugandans to grow for you those trees. Why I'm saying that, I happen to come from the east, where at some point they said a factory which was made for the mangoes was not suitable for the mangoes. So that kind of synergizing where you say, this is the product I need, and you tell them from the start exactly what kind of a tree species and whether it works in the environment we are in. So I needed you to bring it out so that some of us may go for tree planting, knowing that we're also addressing environmental issues too.
Okay.
Number 2 goes to the gentleman in, I think is UDB. Okay, the bankers. I think that would touch the
East
central
African
bank as well.
Development Bank, yeah.
I will also add it to the last presenter who talked about power. Because recently the president of Kenya said he signed some deals to manage some storage, whatever, in Kenya, but later I learned that the energy required to set up those hubs was more than the current energy requirement of the whole of Kenya, so I think he threw up in sums. And therefore, I was thinking in terms of financing startups, because if you are trying to bring other people to add on the energy grid, those are basically kind of startups in our context in Uganda. I don't know whether you really have a lot of plans for people who want to do startups in terms of financing those investments.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Be blessed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The questions have been taken. Let's get the next one. If there is any, I'll take just a second one because we already have 2 questions coming through. Oh, there's a lady at the back. Yes, there's a lady at the back. We'll go with that.
Thank you so much. Protocol observed. I am Nasimbwa Joyce, Director, Jomok Factory from PG. This question goes to the bankers in the room. When we come for your services, like I need maybe 100 million for my investment, then you underestimate me and you tell me I will give you 50 million, and you find that this money is not enough to do my production. I'm in concrete manufacturing. I'm just wondering how you can support us as local manufacturers, because we are competing with Turkish people who are having billion investments. They have the best technology and they have working capital. I don't know about it's going even to investment department. How are you going to support us, local manufacturers? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I think I will just hold it because I don't seem to see any other hand raised up. Now, I will start from Brian to respond to the question. And also at that, I think you will also give some conclusive remarks looking at the time that we have on us.
Thank you for that question on what we have done to encourage and also ascertain the viability of rubber tree growing in Uganda. So we are currently doing feasibility studies, and where we have reached, we are doing technical feasibility studies. So like I said, we have to start in the market. It made no sense initially to start encouraging people to do rubber when the factory is not up and running. But we are now at a point where we are now applying for expansion capital so that we scale to a level which can provide a commercially viable pool for the latex that will be produced. And our feasibilities are now at a stage of technical. We are doing soil samples, and we are working in partnership with the Malaysia Rubber Board. Why Malaysia? Malaysia is the hub of the global, leader in medical glove and rubber products manufacturing in the world. And in order for you to just get an idea of Uganda's potential and how it's comparable to Malaysia's, Malaysia was built on two industries, that is rubber and palm oil, yeah? And Malaysia is also on the equator, and our climate is very similar, except for a bit of humidity here and there. There are a whole host of rubber trees scattered all over the west of Uganda and in the Republic of Congo. So in terms of whether this is technically possible, we are 100% sure it is possible. We will definitely need government support to encourage tree growing, this specific tree growing. I am one of the beneficiaries of an old project which was called SPGS, where they encouraged us to plant pine and eucalyptus, and they would match our contributions in tree planting. It was a wonderful project, and I'm one of the beneficiaries. So I know that it's possible, and we look forward to that being done. And then as maybe some sort of inspiration and parting remarks for all who are here listening, Jeff Bezos, the CEO, executive chairman of Amazon, was recently being interviewed, and he was talking about his story, the Amazon story, and he explained that one of the best things about the United States of America, and again, I'm not trying to go away from us finding our own solutions, but they are globally established principles of development. And I think that's where our keynote speaker was also picking the solutions he was giving us. So the African solution is finding money within our coffers, within what's around, in Africa, so that we resolve and provide the solution to support manufacturing, as opposed to just holding, sitting back and hoping that the DFIs will be targeted to give us solutions that are more skewed to adding value as opposed to export of raw materials. But my point is this, that he said one of the greatest things that is in America is what they call risk capital. He gives an example of the fact that, one, he got some risk capital from his family. It ran out after about 1 year. He went to his family again. They enabled him to go around their friends and pick capital. He picked $1 million, $1 million from about 21 people, so approximately $50,000 for each of them. And he was able to set up, to prove the concept of Amazon. Amazon did not become profitable, did not break even until the 10th year. So that is the level of mindset that we need to have. We need to have a long-term mindset. The impact of the tenor and of our financing is so huge, the tenor and scale. Because when you look at, if you have a loan that is covering only 10 years compared to someone who has a loan covering, which needs to be paid back in 20 years, every year and every month, I have to account for splitting that monthly payment across my total production, so that every unit tries as much as possible to be competitive with what is coming into the country. So that is where tenor comes in. So for me, just as my parting remarks would be, let's be of one mind, and let's know that whichever role we are playing in the economy, whether it's the entrepreneur taking a risk, whether it is the financiers, whether it's the policymakers, let's understand that this is not a short-term game, this is a long-term game. And we have done everything, our country, even with all its challenges, we have continued to develop, we have continued to improve, and what's been done is remarkable. The only frontier remaining now is unlocking this issue of financing to encourage local production from our own coffers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brian. And as I go to Mr. Deo Sande from the Bank of Uganda to respond to a few issues that could have been raised and also your parting remarks, I would also encourage you, in case you feel you need some sugars, you need some caffeine, feel free just slightly to step outside to your right. you can grab a cup of coffee or tea and get back. We need to have our working tea because we do not have elastic time on us, so we won't have the time to break off entirely. But in case you feel you want to grab something to eat or a cup of coffee or tea, just step out and to your right, you'll be able to find the serving table. Yes, to you, Mr. Sunday.
Thank you very much. I would like to speak to that question, the second question by the lady. Why she goes to the bank, she's asking for 100 million and the bank offers her 50 million. The first journey in this whole thing is, I suppose, in the interest of what relationship have you developed with your bank? So, as an institution, this is part of the financial inclusion story. Bank of Uganda feels as the business community, it's important for you to develop a relationship with your bankers, because part of the story in your making your projects viable, the banks may look at your cash flow. So there's a case for you just walking in without considering the fact that I need this 100 million, and yet if you had this, let's say you bank with this bank, they see your cash flow, the bank is in position to offer you more money. So the known problem now in the economy is that people only go to the bank to borrow the money. They don't establish a relationship with the banks. So I would encourage us to establish relationships with the banks, and with that, the banks will be in position to offer you as much as they think you can take on board. And that's just to speak to that question of just don't walk in for the money. Establish that relationship. That's very important.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. And to you, Mr. Asira, as you respond to Sam, and you'll also give us your parting shots.
Thank you. So in my closing, I'll attempt to answer the questions. Three things. One is we've already talked about the issue of the cost of power. Now, as DFIs, we are very well positioned to support the transmission and the distribution. At the moment, there's a lot of power that has been generated, but I think there's an issue around transmission and distribution. We are well positioned. If we can do it around the Lake Victoria Ring, effectively it means that it's possible to access cheaper power from a neighboring country within the same block. So that's one. Two is the issue of the financing and the tenor, which keeps coming up. So at the moment, East African Development Bank, 10, 12, 15 years, that's the space we are playing in, and we can fund your projects. But again, a properly structured project tells you how long it will take to pay back. So let's not shy away from, don't shy away from speaking to us and saying that you need 20 years, maybe you need 10, maybe you need 7. Let's talk, let's have a look at your project. As we speak right now, we are struggling to find manufacturing projects that we can fund. It's a big issue in this region. And you begin to ask yourself, where are the jobs going to come from? Can we dialogue with the importers? Why am I so focused on the importers? It's because they have already tested the market, they're able to sell the products. Someone who can already sell a product is an easier person to deal with when it comes to supporting them to manufacture the product, because they already know the route to market. And then lastly, on the question of startups, the one thing that must never be forgotten is that DFIs exist to address market failures. DFIs are not supposed to be competing commercial banks and operating in the space of commercial banks. Talk to us. We should be able to fund startups. That's why we exist. In closing, I think what we require is more engagement. There are a lot of people with ideas, there are a lot of people people thinking about something they would like to do, but they're not coming out to talk to the DFIs. There is a lot of collaboration going on at the moment across Africa under an alliance of multilateral financial institutions. It's called AMFI. What we realize is that through this alliance, you'll find that if a project is bankable, but EADB is not able to do all of it, or a part of it, or cannot provide certain things that it requires, it will reach out to AFC, it will reach out to Africa Development Bank. And for information, Africa Development Bank is a shareholder in East African Development Bank. And therefore, please, investors, this is your time. Talk to us. Let's see how we can support you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We'll end with Peter. And especially also, Peter, while the Uganda Development Corporation was having the engagement or the keynote, there seemed to be a lot of conversation around our foreign direct investment, heavily being with regard to extraction of natural resources as opposed to more, manufacturing going on. How do you think we can be able to work better also on the side of manufacturing, as you give us your parting shots?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mildred. And we have had a very engaging period in time over the last few days, and I've listened very carefully from the last speakers. You'll allow me, since we've been moving very steadily in terms of time, I could see that time was increasing coming my side. I expend a little bit more time so that I can dive into the issues that you've highlighted. So we have already addressed the main issue, which is how far are we industrializing, or shall Africa ever industrialize? We have industrialization here. We have the women behind industrialization from the speakers that have just spoken. These are Africans, but we also have FDIs that are purely for women. The questions that I'm hearing and that I've been catching, I spent time with the youth yesterday, downstairs, interacting with some of the circles that have come to us looking for business ideas, and also based on the engagements that we've had in the last period over the forums that we have been having, be it the forums in this continent or abroad, the questions remain around acceleration. How do we accelerate? How do we sustain? How do we make sure that what we are doing is inclusive in terms of both women and youth, but also inclusive in terms of the blended financing that my colleagues were talking about, a whole mix of it. There's also questions around how do we bridge the gaps in brands. We are trying to address the issue of global value chains. In most of the industrial parks that we are monitoring, because we have a monitoring and evaluation component which is very key for us, we want to address what Mr. Asira is talking about in terms of how do we add value. Yesterday, you were doing value addition into juice, but we have also seen that there are many other juice processors. What else can you do? Can you probably preserve the puree and put it in a place where it can actually be long-term?
Okay.
Then, finally, it is to address the issues around complementarity, to appreciate the role of which institution is playing where in the journey of investment, from inception, from when the formation of the company starts, business registration, right until the end, where you are tapping into the economy in terms of financing. So Uganda Investment Authority, the role is to ensure that you are focused and you have a framework where you can go in terms of advancing the whole agenda of Uganda's industrialization. The next bit is your growth, to ensure that you are not just producing for the sake of what your business strategy talks about. But instead, you are producing for the market. That is when you are addressing the issues Mr. Brian Kavi and Mr. Sira are talking about, where you are relevant, where you are most needed. And that goes on to my last point of being competitive. This whole industrialization agenda does not end anywhere without your product being the most competitive in the market. And what do at Uganda Investment Authority is to ensure that your cost of doing business is curtailed. And that is my daily job, to ensure that we are meeting the stakeholders. We are talking with the policy, advocating for policy changes. We are talking about the incentive regime. When we talk about tax incentives, we are constantly combing through the whole tax incentives booklet with the Uganda Revenue Authority to ensure that be it the manufacturer, be it the agro-industrialist, be it the person in tourism industry, everyone is tapping into the incentive regime. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, it is to invite you to be very familiar with the one-stop center. This is the hub where business happens. Gone are the days where you come hopping around and looking for a lawyer to take you around in terms of business registration. At Uganda Investment Authority, and the one-stop center is a conglomerate of all government institutions in one room. We will make sure that the license that we issue takes less than 48 hours. What does that mean? That means then that you can walk on each other desks of government and pick your license, be it in NEMA, be it in KCCA, but also making sure that the cost is not expensive, so that your experience in Uganda as you come as a foreign direct investor or as a domestic investor is very, very good. And that is my job and a job at Uganda Investment Authority, to ensure that you remain in Uganda, you produce more, you increase, and then we as an economy can see our next agenda of growth. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Peter. I wish we had elastic time to continue. We unfortunately have to bring this conversation to a close here. I want to say a special thank you to East African Medical Vitals, the East African Development Bank, the Bank of Uganda, as well as the Uganda Investment Authority. Gentlemen, I will now request that we just stand and take a group photo as I invite back Simon to take over the microphone once again. Let's just stand for a group photo.
I think this panel and the moderator, Mildred, deserve a hand clap from all of us. They have taken us through a very interestingly deep conversation that went ahead to digest the earlier keynote address that had been made by the Executive Director of Uganda Development Corporation, breaking it down into the practicability of what they do in their respective facets. And then we did see the assurances coming in from the government agency that was on board, which is the Uganda Investment Authority, as well as the Central Bank, giving us some kind of ray of hope that where we are headed, there is some policy engagement that facilitates trade. Now, what we're going in, folks, I know sometimes after a heavy and high-octane presentation such as this, we need to pepper down this for it to sink. But may I suggest that we proceed in the order of business, because again, time is not an ally on our end, but also importantly, we will all agree that we came for serious business, and serious business ought to be dealt with so that then we can relax at once. So, in no further ado, may I invite our next keynote address that will be coming in from someone that has prepared himself, who I intend to invite by way first of sharing with us their profile, and then as they make their way here, I think Mildred has a housekeeping announcement she intends to make. Oh, okay, fine. I am told the previous panel ought to be thanked in a manner that UDC knows how best So I will request that UDC steps forward and thanks their respective panelists. Mr. Peter Muramira, Mr. Kavuya, and all the other panelists that were here.
Yes,
please
kindly
come forward.
requesting the panelists to get back for a word of thank you from the Uganda Development Corporation. That's how they do their thing. Okay, we'll start with Peter, probably, and I think we can have the board chair of Uganda Development Corporation handing over this in the shortest time possible so we can do it. We'll start with Uganda Investment Authority. Peter coming through. If you could step up, I think it's Peter, if you could just kindly step up right here, and the board chair will be able to hand over that. Right up, yes. I'll request Brian as well to just get back, East African Development Bank, as well as the Bank of Uganda. UDC does it in a totally different way, that guests don't come and they leave empty-handed. Thank you so much. Brian, wherever you are. And Peter, if you may, please don't go too far so you can... We would want that branding. It's very important as well to come in. And that's Brian from East African Medical Vitals. Let's get back the financials, East African Development Bank. And I'd like to invite the Executive Director of Uganda Development Corporation as well to get back for, to have this one. There are no terms and conditions. So Dr. Patrick Birungi, there are no terms and conditions that applied in this one. You'll be as well getting yours here from the board chair. And I'll request everyone else to come back for that group picture as I hand back to Simon. Sorry. Please, let's come back for that group photo. Mr. Kasiate, back to you, please.
Thank you very much, Mildred, and the previous panel. I think we have seen that it pays heavily to be on a panel that has been organized and put together by UDC. And so we who are looking for the next panels, I believe now we know what the catch is. And of course, we know that the gifts come in from UDC. Concerning UDC is a government agency. They are fully aware of the limitations of how much can be in a gift bag. And so those in government agencies that have received them, they don't have to open them for the full scrutiny of all of us. And considering that we have a new IGG in town, you do not want to be the first example of how hard she can bite. Well, we are now going in straight away to yet a very brief but impactful keynote address that is speaking about building the foundations that include energy, transport, and digital infrastructure for manufacturing. And now this is how we're going to do it. After this keynote address, we will invite a key industrialist that is within us who will come to discuss this keynote address from a very practical point of view, someone with a pedigree of manufacturing, pedigree of starting something that has since become a phenomenon in terms of what they're able to do with very minimal resources, but riding on what it is that we're trying to unlock today, whether it's an enabling environment in terms of infrastructure, whether it is an enabling environment in terms of energy, an enabling environment with regard to human resource and human capital development, an enabling environment in as far as financing is concerned. So I believe that the next session is not one where we are discussing largely from the comfort of a classroom or research, but I think we will hear from someone that has been in what many of you would want to term as the school of life. So without further ado, allow me invite Dr. Isaac Shinyekwa, who is the head of Trade and Regional Integration, the Department of Economic Policy Research Center. And we'll be glad to hear from you from a point of research and then you will hear from a point of practice. I thank you.
How many minutes? Huh? I don't know. I'll try. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed. Through the slides to try as much as possible to be in tandem with me, because I've been told a shortage of time. So please, you'll have to move with me as quickly as possible. I work for the Economic Policy Research Center as a senior research fellow, and I head the Department of Trade and Regional Integration. This presentation draws from a number of reports. I'll highlight one of them. And it canvasses the entire African continent, so it's not based on Ugandan experience, as I was guided. You can skip that one and go straight. Yeah, precisely. So I would wish to give a perspective of the Africa's manufacturing value added. This is 2021. It is really low. It is below 2%. And I think Dr. Birun did a very good portion on that, compared with Asia, which is 54%. So we are really doing badly as Africa. That's what I want to underline on that. And I also want to remind us, this presentation is data intensive. When you look at the concentration of this below 2%, it's largely in 5 countries, taking the share of 70%, and the rest of us sharing 30%. And this is Egypt, South Africa, Algeria, Morocco, and Nigeria. You can imagine those are the big bulls in the crowd in terms of sharing this very little 1.9%. Okay? Oh, you never moved with me. Sorry. Can you move? Yeah, that's the one I've just been talking about. Move the next one. I just wanted to give a flavor of what's happening in terms of our manufacturing status. And the questions that I intend to answer, if I can, what are the key physical and digital infrastructure bottlenecks that impede our manufacturing? How do we compare with global benchmarks? I'm not going to attempt to answer the last one. Maybe the panel will do that, or along the way, just for us to understand what's happening in as far as industrialization in Africa. Can we move on, please? So the bottlenecks, in terms of what we have discussed from morning up to now, yeah, it is infrastructure. Number 2 is access to credit. Number 3, it's logistics. Number 4, unreliable and expensive electricity. And then the skills gaps. Of course, these are not the only ones, the others. And I'm not going to go into the details because, again, Dr. Ben, you did a good job on this. Let's move to the next slide. Now I'll start by discussing transport and logistics. Move to the next slide, please. Yeah. As a bottleneck, Go to the next slide. The state of transport infrastructure. We have seen the development of many ports since mid-2000s rather, and this has really taken on shape. Goods inefficient, making them very expensive and, of course, time consuming. And I'll show some. The concentration. Yeah, if you look at that map, what you notice is that African ports are attracting a lot of private sector participation, but the rest of the logistics and transport value chain fails to generate private sector investment. So you'll see there is those big zeros telling us about 2010 and 2021, the growth, which has been quite phenomenal. But within the continent itself, there's no integration. So there is that big challenge. Next slide. Yeah, when you look at that slide, if you look at the first one, those are ports, second one, railways, third one, roads, and the fourth one, airports. You will notice that Africa has invested quite a lot in ports, which I was showing you previously. And that is the best we have done. In terms of roads, in terms of rail, in terms of airports, we are doing very, very, very badly. That bottom line there. The other regions, because I'm doing a comparative analysis, they're really putting money in these areas. You can see, for example, Europe is putting, Europe and Central Asia, they are putting a lot in airports. In terms of roads, East Asia and the Pacific are doing quite a lot. For us, we have only concentrated around the cost, so the lack of integration. Next. When you look at those two maps, you'll notice quite little in terms of road networks. Take an example, Africa's total paved road network spans approximately 680,000 kilometers, which is just 6 times smaller than India, the Indian continent. That is, India is small, we are a mass. So we are 1/6 of what India is doing.
That's a very big challenge. The most developed economies like South Africa, Algeria account for approximately 40%. Again, these are at the costs. Despite occupying 20% of the world's population, Africa's paved road network accounts for just 1%. Majority of our movements and movement of goods, these are all by road. We have a challenge. I'll move very fast. In terms of the rail network, I mentioned it's neglected, underfunded, and declining traffic is witnessed. There's limited interconnectivity. Now, we have different gauge systems, older meter gauge rate, standard gauge rail lines, and Cape gauge networks. These ones, they are different rail networks, and they are not interlinked. There is a very big challenge in terms of making sure all these work together in tandem. Next, let's move. So Africa's air infrastructure has witnessed continued expansion in recent years. However, it still falls short of global performance in terms of standards and handles only a modest volume of freight. The establishment of air cargo hubs has been limited to specific regions where economies exhibit great diversification, like Egypt, like South Africa, and Kenya. Between 2001 and 2015, the overall air transport capacity in sub-Saharan Africa saw a notable increase from an estimated 47 million to 100, that's more than double, million seats. Okay, this is what happened to us. In terms of freight, it increased from 2.2 million tons per kilometer in 2012 to 4.2 million tons per kilometer in 2021, significantly behind those of the Middle East, who are doing 34, and Asia, 65. The comparisons really sees very dismal performance. Now let me show you, let's go to the next one. And you see, this is what I've been talking about. When you compare ourselves with the other regions, we are really at the bottom in terms of cargo transport. Let's move to the next slide. In terms of investment, the aviation sector has witnessed limited private sector investment in recent years, with investment levels even declining, as you can see in that chart. Several factors hinder investment. These are the challenges, the bottlenecks, and growth in African aviation. Number one, the relatively high cost of air travel stemming from low passenger volumes, stringent airspace regulations, and elevated passengers and airport taxes present significant challenges. In some countries, you have to pay, in Africa here. Then concerns over safety. This exacerbates the whole problem, which limits investment. Let's move to the next one. So all these compound and make logistics a nightmare along the entire value chain, which makes it very difficult for moving goods. The World Bank Logistics Index, it's called the Logistics Performance Index, shows that African economies rank lower than their global peers. We are not doing well. It's only in South Africa, Egypt, and Botswana that you see some good performance, perhaps. On our corridors here, the Northern Corridor, that we all know, it takes you 1.8 US dollars per kilometer per container to move, nearly double the international norm, which is about $1. So to carry your goods and take into the cost of East Africa at Mombasa is more expensive perhaps than even carrying those goods, taking them to Europe. So we have a big challenge in terms of logistics. Processing time and handling costs are notably higher at African ports, averaging 50% higher than the other regions. And many African ports are either at or nearing their capacity limits, with the traffic growth projections expected to further strain the turnaround efficiency. With the crowding, we'll have challenges in terms of logistics. So, having given a picture of this infrastructure, what are the key issues? The key issues is integrate the networks, create multimodal systems that use the different facets of the transport network when it comes to infrastructure development. Then the one-stop border posts have become a norm, and that's what we should emphasize more. Let's go to energy infrastructure. That picture you're seeing there is a picture of the Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia, I think under construction. I biased myself to this just to give us an idea of what these people have done internally. Okay. So, except for North Africa, our continent's electricity infrastructure remains underdeveloped and unreliable, hindering development and industrialization. So you'll see that Africa takes a very big portion of the population of the world, about 1/5, but only contributes less than 6% of the global energy consumption. That is sickness of the highest level. We need to address this. Of our gigawatts that we produce, okay, they are just equivalent in the whole Africa, equivalent to what Germany. So our electricity consumption equals to what one country in Europe does. I think that one also shows exactly where we are. And then the level of investments into electricity generation has not matched our potential. Just to give an idea about our potential, 1% of our solar energy right now is what we are having. So we have 99% unexploited. For gas, we have 95% unexploited. For geothermal energy, we have 94% unexploited. And wind, we have 93% unexploited. And for hydro, we are only doing 11%. So we can still generate more. Now, let's go to the next, just for me to underline what I've been saying. That is showing us our potential and what we're doing. For solar, the gigawatts are 11,000 that we can, but we're doing only 12. So what does that mean? If we tapped into this, we could really do a lot. This slide just emphasizes what we had seen from the previous potential and what we have so far achieved. So there is underutilized potential that we should tap into. Let's move to the next one. In terms of consumption, it is established that the per capita, which is normal, like you talk about the poverty line here in Uganda, should be around 1,000. As you can see, North Africa, Africa itself, South Africa, we are all below the 1,000 kWh per capita. Whereas Oceania, Americas, Asia, wow, they are really above. Now, how do we compute this 1,000? It's computed that 700 have to be for industrialization or manufacturing, and then 300 have for lighting at homes to come up with that figure. We are not doing well. Move on. Now, in terms of transmission, which I think the bank has talked about, we are doing very badly. We are again below the thresholds. We are down there in terms of transmitting this energy. The energy is produced like we have had in Uganda, but we have a problem regarding moving that energy to some place. Let me move to the next one. In terms of generation, the growth in Africa is 2.1%. Others are 4-point-something%, high up there. We are not doing very well. In terms of generation, we need to speed up. So the salient issues that come out of this is that limited funding and capacity competing for global funds. You remember the experience of Ethiopia when they wanted to do their dam and they were told you can't do it for different reasons. Competing for these funds is a problem. There's inadequate public funding and limited private sector funding, interest in transmission and distribution. That's an area to underline. Existing grid networks suffer from losses that hinder the utilization and evacuation of electricity. The systems need to be upgraded, and And then the lack of capacity, this lack of capacity does not allow people to invest a lot in electricity. Yeah, so we end up not doing very well. And the key issues in terms of energy is collaborative efforts between the public and private sector, underline transmission as something we need to address very seriously, and then we try brownfield generation. These are already existing facilities that need to be helped to expand and to do the job better. Those are 3 areas that I identify that we need to think about. We go to digital infrastructure. All right. Move the next slide. Now, this is an interesting area. I'll go a little bit sorry, but I'm trying to make us understand. There are three phases or areas, I don't know how you could term them, that deal with internet. There's what called the first mile, which connects data from its source to a local hub, like a subsea cable, cable landing stations, etc. Then the middle mile, which carries large amounts of data between hubs. Okay? Then the last one is the one that goes to the end user. In other words, you're talking about the sea, you're talking about here and where perhaps it comes from. So despite the progress that we have made in undersea internet, cables, and backbone infrastructure, the content remains far behind much of the rest of the world, especially in the last mile connections. 60% of Africans have no access to internet, where lack of fiber prevents the distribution of bandwidth more locally. Digital services also remain too expensive. Affordability remains a problem. Let's move to the next one. And it's this affordability that actually, the next slide, yes, yeah, no, that one. Affordability actually makes us have only 40% connected, and then we are vulnerable. You remember when there were issues in the sea, there's the issue of vulnerability, and then the data development centers. In the next slide, I will show how poor we are doing when it comes to data center development. And then there is investment tends to focus on populated centers, urban centers. The rural ones are neglected. This is like the challenges that are happening here. Now, go to the next slide. The next slide is showing us that, yes, that internet bandwidth consumption is very small in Africa. In the first side, the other side of the chart, we consume less. It's a result of what I've already said. And then connectivity and penetration is also low, which is 40% as a result of that. Next, capacity of data centers. Africa accounts for just 1% of the world's data capacity. 1% like this. So for us to keep pace and achieve what South Africa has achieved, we need to do 700 new data centers, which we are really doing very, very badly. And you can see, comparing some African countries in the chart and other European countries, data centers remain a big challenge that we need to work on. Let's move to the next one. The technology mix. The G2, G3, G4, G5 in the first chart. Where is Africa? We are somewhere with G4, but largely, of course, we have G3 and G2. Others, like Europe, are almost G4. And the next chart, in terms of adoption by percentage, North Africa is at 8%, Sub-Saharan Africa is at 4%, whereas North America is 63%. This shows the dismal level of catching up with the technology that makes things move and shine. I'm about finished, ladies and gentlemen. Then I'm going to industrial zones. I'm not going to talk much about industrial zones because there's quite a lot, but I'll say 1 or 2, 3 things. In the literature, industrial zones free zones, special zones. They are all sort of banded together. This is a one in Ethiopia. But it's the way forward for us to overcome some of these infrastructure challenges, literally. If we do that, then we concentrate in one area, we shall be able to do quite a lot. Why do we go into industrial zones? In some, we have tax exemptions, simplified custom procedures, streamlined administrative regulations, and a dedicated high infrastructure. And this is the model that we are picking on that we need to really sell, because then it helps us to do quite a lot. It attracts for us FDI in localized environment. And, but the challenge is this. If you follow the old model of special zones and the free zones, when we are liberalizing at the continental level, we're going to have a challenge. The challenge is that you only sell 20% in the local economy and 70% must go out at a tax or so, and yet we have liberalized. So we have those challenges. To me, I would think we need to work on one major thing, to use these centers to localize services, to have training centers, to have incubation centers, and have the ability to be able to manufacture without some of these challenges. The last slide I have simply summarizes the rationale of industrial parks, which I have explained. Ladies and gentlemen, infrastructure development at a continental level is no longer a wish, it is a must. Industrialization is a war. You have to fight it using different tools. They say industrialization and trade are actually part of the war, or reasons why people even go to get the guns and fight. So we need to be very strategic and make sure we have sufficient infrastructure at the continental level to be able to reach out and industrialize. Thank you very much for listening to me.
I think, given the circumstances and the depth of his presentation and what time it is on your clock, this gentleman tried and he deserves a hand clap. With my little experience in this business, however brilliant a conversation is and life-changing, but when it comes at an hour such as this, the levels of concentration may not be at their best. But here is our consolation. The next person I am inviting to just share with us their snippets of how they do it. If I may use Ugandan street speak, where in the local dialect we say, Ochikolo otia. You may want to ask yourself, why am I running to go and have my lunch at this hour when my bank account does not have even double-digit US dollars in terms of plain amounts, when the person that is pitted to speak to me is speaking of maybe $3-digit million on their account? And unlike you and me, who go smiling to the bank, for them they go laughing to the bank. And I think that's a better situation for all of us, and that's why we aspire to be. And so having heard this great presentation from an academic, a policy analyst, allow me invite a man who, and I will use the example that we just shared. He said, India is 10 times smaller than Uganda, than Africa. And yet Africa's total road network, paved roads, is 6 times less than India. He says the internet proliferation in this part of the world accounts for about 1% of the global internet proliferation. Of course, we are told that when it comes to electricity and other energy sources, we are plainly and literally a dark continent. But then there are those who may have had the opportunity to invest in India and any other part of the world, but they have invested not just in Africa, but they have invested in Uganda. What have they seen that we are not seeing? How can we follow the torch of the illumination so that together we can build this continent? Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Mr. Sikandar Lalani, the chairman of the Roofings Group. And as he comes, he told me that seeing is believing. So as he comes, a video of what he has done is going to play on our screens to set the stage for what he will tell us in his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As a key player in manufacturing sector, especially steel and steel products industry, and also as chairman of the Uganda Iron and Steel Manufacturing Association, I will provide my comments in this context, that is manufacturing of iron and manufacturing of steel. I'll be very short. The key infrastructure affecting our industry or affected by our industry are: one, rail transport. When we started, we were transporting about 3,000 tons of our material by rail. At the moment, we are transporting 12,000 tons of material by rail. And we have monthly requirement of about 30,000 tons of steel. So here my message is we have to invest in our railway line, upgrade our lines, and of course we are waiting, all of us, for standard gauge railway, which will improve the transportation a lot. Road transport for the northern corridor from Mombasa up to Kampala, and especially from Kampala up to the border. I think that road condition, we have to look into it, invest, and improve on this road condition a lot. Water transport, there is a lot of opportunity to export from the East African countries, especially Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. We ourselves, we are exporting a lot of our material by lake from Port Bell to Tanzania, Mwanza Port Bell to Kisumu. And for the moment, we do not have enough vessel and transport facilities to cover up this transport. And our request is that the water transport is very important. It's the cheapest way of transportation, and we have to improve a lot on it, increase vessels on the lake. We can also look into developing our local lake transport in all over Uganda. And not only lake transport, but then also we have to develop the transport within Uganda. Now to supply the products to each part of Uganda, we lack the infrastructure in Uganda. But at large, we have to develop the community and most of all, Africa. Electricity, this is under energy sector. We have enough power to run all our industries over here in Uganda. But our problem is the quality of power. There is fluctuation of power cuts, and the quality of power. This is where we have to improve a lot. On hydrocarbons, hydrogen for cleaning steel and galvanizing to ensure strong and uniform coating. We have the plant and it's operational. We are using it. We encourage others to use this technology. Liquefied petroleum gas for powering furnaces and processes. Our requirement is 780 metric tons per month. We have got the largest capacity installed in the country for the use of LPG, and after our oil industry is developed, I think this will help us out a lot. Under ICT sector, ICT sector impact to the industry, business services are linked. Our systems are interlinked with URA, URSB, NSSF, banking sector, etc. For example, our SAP HANA 4 is linked to all these services, and we encourage other businesses and other industries to link up onto different sectors of business. Technological services, a number of equipment are monitored online by technology providers. For example, all our machines are linked to the supplier, and this helps out a lot, and we request everyone to use these facilities. My appeal to the government for the improvement in infrastructure to boost investment in the industry. Number one is invest in power quality and more capacity for the future. Number two, invest in water transport, vessels, upgrade of port, and new waterways, especially on the rivers. Use technology for level playing field, and here level playing field, the only control is input-output ratio. The industrial norms of input-output ratios should be used by URA to improve the taxation, tax collection by the country, which is so important. Use technology for market connectivity. The level of online trade is low in Uganda, unlike the rest of the world. This can boost export trade as well as compliance due to visibility of transactions and flexibility in payments. Reduce cost of plastic money, mobile money, and online transaction. For example, it is cheaper to move with 20 million shilling in cash from Bushani to Kampala than to send it through mobile money or use of Visa, MasterCard. Here in Uganda, the use of mobile money, Visa, MasterCard, the expenses are too high. And the development for us, for our industry, where we are, I am in Uganda since 1994. Until now, we have developed in partnership with the government. The government has played an enormous part in development of the private sector, and a lot can be done by the integration of private sector and government departments to develop the country and at large the continent. Apart from this, thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I can answer. Anything which anyone wants to ask, please. What do you feel? A couple of questions.
Yeah, you can just sit so that you can ask.
Okay.
I think let's give Mzee Lalani a huge hand clap. I was worried that he was not going to share very succinctly from the heart, considering that I don't know what it means to be rich. You will agree with me. So my thinking is that rich people never share the secrets of how to become rich. Otherwise, all of us may be like them. But it's different with him. He's not only generous in the way he shares his information, but he has also challenged us to ask him a question as to how, where, and what he does. I think for me, that's a golden opportunity. So you have no one but yourself to blame for being the way you are, especially if you're in the presence of Mzee Lalani and you don't ask a question. But to put his conversation in perspective before the question comes through, allow me to invite Mr. Ajutu Emmanuel, an Assistant Commissioner with the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development in charge of policy analysis. Where are you, Emmanuel Ajutu? Please come and sit right next to Mzee Lalani. Also, allow me to invite a very distinguished lady amongst us, Mrs. Irene Birungi Mugisha, who is the CEO of the Presidential CEOs Forum, or simply put, the CEO of CEOs in Uganda. Irene Mugisha, please step forward and sit with us so that when the questions come and the conversations begin, we have how we can balance this boat. Mzee Lalani has spoken of some of the opportunities he's taken since 1994, some of the challenges he has to navigate, and from his conversation looks like it doesn't matter, you are up and sailing against the tide. Emmanuel, when an industrialist of this stature says it is true we have enough electricity to power our industry, but the challenge is the quality of the electricity and the reliability of that electricity. And you are seated at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development as an Assistant Commissioner for Policy Analysis. Share with us what you've taken in your notebook with regard to his concern, and then allay his concerns as to what you are doing to fix his concern. Let's start from there. I can't hear you, but let me come and fix the microphone for you.
Okay. Thank you so much, members, and thank you so much for this invite. I think this is really a very great opportunity. I may begin backwards from the conversations which I found going on. All of them focus on the issue of the quality of electricity, the quality of the infrastructure. There are quite a number of issues there. And then also the issues to do with the diversification of generation sources, because I remember members were talking about the various sources and all of that. So members, this is really a very good opportunity, and this conversation should really give us insights on where we are coming from, where we are currently, and where we are headed to. Just as a reminder, members, government diversified electricity supply, diversified the distribution, and recently also we diversified the transmission. It is now open because initially it was single off-taker. So transmission now has been opened up. So meaning that private sector players are free to come and participate. Just before also I come to addressing the concerns of power supply, I first of all need to agree with the roofing that really they're doing a good job for Uganda. But I'm also trying to impress upon them that if you listen to the conversation, was most of the inputs are imported. I would like to sell this opportunity that we have significant amount of iron ore resources in the country, which if we added value, it would really help us to create jobs and also to grow our economy. Well, right now, the challenges are the issues of how much are we generating, because for you to do an iron ore smelter, you need really significant amount of energy resources. So we're doing a feasibility study to do a reverse gas flow from Tanzania to help us smelt those iron ore. So I request that let's put that into consideration so that we utilize, we add value to the resources we have within the country. Now, on the issue of reliability of power, members who are in a transition, you remember we had the issues of transitioning from umeme to distribution. So the key challenges we're having now is the quality of infrastructure, which require significant investments. If we recall, when we're transitioning from Umeme to UEDCL, if you took note, there was in the speech it was indicated that we require a minimum of $50 million investment to improve on the quality of our infrastructure per annum, which is quite significant. So I'm happy to note that roofing really is one of our key customers, the key off-takers. So we've done dedicated power lines there's a dedicated substation to supply roofings in 2 locations. There's one in Namamve and then this way on Entebbe Road. So we're trying to address that. So we're trying to do one, invest in stabilizing the existing infrastructure. 2, modernize the infrastructure, because as I remember the previous speaker was saying, that we need to come up with innovative approaches. How are we going to use modern technology to help us enhance or improve the quality of our infrastructure? So we're also investing on improving on modernization of our existing infrastructure. So those are the key areas we're trying to address. But of course, also members, if you take note, the electricity demand, right now we appear to be having excess generation capacity, but we need to take note that the demand is growing significantly. We are actually looking at maybe within the next 3 or 4 years, what is available will be exhausted. So we are also looking at various options. Right now, we are fronting a number of power generation sites. There is Kiba, there is Yago, there is Uru. There are quite a number of them, number of options, but also we are looking at other innovative approaches, like, for example, solar, that those off-grids. We have also moved a step ahead with the geothermal. We've done the subsurface studies. Now we're moving into we have done the surface, now we're moving to subsurface studies. And actually, one of the things we're expecting to do is we're going to do a test plant to guide us how much can we generate of about 24 megawatts. That's a study plant. So we're doing a lot in that area. But significant also, if we are to move forward, if we look at all these existing hydropower plants, or the potentials, and probably wind, solar, it may not be able to lift us to what we call that tenfold growth strategy, because we are looking at, in the next 5 years, we need about 14 gigawatts of installed capacity, which is really quite significant. So the existing resources may not help us to attain that. So we're also putting a footprint on nuclear. So far, we've established a research facility. We're in the process of establishing a research facility in Soroti University. We have done the sightings. We have identified 4 sites, but we're focusing on one site where we're currently doing the fundamental studies. So we're hopeful that as the demand grows, all these power plants will come on board and solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Now, especially on the last point, when you have an industrialist like Lalani seated right next to you, who is not researching on when next to build the next production line, he's just looking for financing to build it, and you are telling him you are researching about the prospect of getting a nuclear plant to bring electricity, I don't know whether that's encouraging, or you're simply telling him that that electricity will be available during the time the son of his son's son is the CEO at Roofings, which is 2072. But let's park that, and we will ask you later on how quickly these things can move. Mr. Lalani, I think in answering and making his presentation, Emmanuel asked a question, wondering why you haven't taken the bold step in going for locally available raw materials for your products. He did speak candidly about the availability of deep and far-reaching deposits of iron ore scattered across the country, and he's wondering why you've not taken that bold step, and I'm sure you're going to answer that question. But before you come to that question, I'll get Irene to come in here, because Irene, for us to be able to have questions coming in at once, Irene is involved not just with the CEOs, but she's doing some work in an area that is also of interest to you, and that's the area of the promotion of e-mobility, where she's currently involved with Uganda's e-mobility sector, advocating for sustainable transportation solutions through her work with the Kira Motors EV. So Irene, even as we clamor for more industrialization, the country is also looking at green energy, green interventions, and e-mobility. And one wonders, using the Kira Motors case as Kira Motors Corporation as a case study, you may want to elaborate on the opportunities and constraints of establishing a successful transport manufacturing sector like Kira Motors in Uganda. And I believe that at some point you're going to bring the concerns to Emmanuel's footstep. But over to you, maybe in 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I would want to first also add volume to appreciating the organizers of this conference that has been rich in so many topics that are building this nation. Simon, on that point of Kira Motors, as we know that Kira Motors is one of our pride products for Uganda, where the leadership of this country took a bold, I don't know how even to put it, that was taking a bold step in saying we can manufacture vehicles in this country. The constraints of having to have a plant like Kira Motors Corporation are immense. But where there's will, there's definitely progress. That's how I can easily put it. At PCF being at almost the entire steps of how best this could be successful, first of all, we had to tackle the constraint of regulatory policies, because those most of the times are the issues that hinder the progress of such a plant to be progressive. Then, of course, the skill set. The automotive industry is a mess. It's huge. It needs engineers. It needs people who actually are sure of what kind of wiring are we putting together, how we are assembling, because we're assembling e-buses when we talk about Kira Motors. So skill set is one thing, but the government has been in position to skill some of these engineers, but we need more. So there's a lot that we need to do in that area of enhancing the skills of this country. Then the other constraint really has been, of course, how best can we have or reduce on the importation of some of these materials that we need. Assembling of just an e-bus, we need tires, we need the floor, we need the whole frame, and that frame is really about the steel that we are talking about here. So if this conversation can enhance the route of having to add value to our iron ore, then we are going to be able to answer the vision of Kira Motors. The opportunities, definitely, as you've given me 2 minutes, are immense. It's about job employment, and that's what the whole conversation here is to how best can we have the steps that can bring job enhancement, but also being able to be seen at the platform of the global platform. That 2% needs to be increased. And so Kira Motors is one of those products for Uganda that we can increase that 2% into another percentage of us being able to be seen as a manufacturing country. So we can do so much. To us, we need to be proud, first of all, of what we have as Ugandans. The moment Kira Motors started its initiation, there was so much of negativity, and that most times affects the growth of what we are planning to do. How best can we use such platforms to create awareness, to create the information or send off that information that we need to be able to bring positivity that can allow the industries that we also have to be able to be proud of what they're doing. So a lot of of propaganda most times is happening. And so it needs a lot of energy to bring together the like-minded personnel, and that's what we're doing at PCF. And what we did is, through our conversations, we're able now to allow government to have that 0% on all e-mobility parts that are manufactured locally within, that is VAT, within the country. And that has attracted quite a number of, even the players who are importing anything to do with e-mobility are now trying to invest in being able to have some of these manufactured in this country. Thank you.
Wow, tremendous. And of course, when you talk about the manufacture of automobiles, Mr. Lalani again smiles and laughs into the bank because he's one of those that produces the core material of what you use, which is iron in its different gauges. Mr. Lalani, we are aware, or at least I am, that I think by the end of this year, His Excellency the President will be visiting your Namave plant, if for nothing else to inaugurate it officially, because you have built it to world-class standards. And yet, he is the same president that has been talking about value addition of what we have here locally. And Emmanuel reiterated that in his question, our iron ore. So tell us what you're doing about the use of that, the same that you will tell the president as to when you will start using our local iron ore and not importing in the bulk of your raw materials. Over to you, sir.
Yes, one thing, Uganda has got excellent quality of iron ore in the country, which 100% we should look into it, and we have to develop to exploit this iron ore and change it into wire rod, billets, tube making coils, re-rollable coils also. These are the products which we are importing for the moment from China, mainly from Japan and all. This can be done here. We have already applied for the permission, to get the land, first of all, to get the iron ore from a land where the contents are very good iron ore contents. The problem here, one big problem, is the reducing agent. And for the reducing agent, we have to depend on Tanzania. The infrastructure, the road infrastructure, and the transportation from the iron ore, from the coal sources in Tanzania up to here, up to Uganda, is a very high cost and all. But this project is possible. We have to start somewhere. We have already contacted our partners in Japan. For a project like this, we need companies, very, very big companies like Nippon Steel, who has got, years and years of experience. It's a high investment project also. I think the investment value can go up to $1 billion. So we need the partners. We are studying the project. And if we go into it, we will manufacture quality product for the population of East Africa and Africa continent. But it takes time. It's not from one day to next that we can go into it. We are studying the project. We are into the details, And as soon as we acquire the land, and as soon as we solve some transportation problems within the country, we will start exploiting the iron ore and making the products out of it.
On this panel should have been someone from the Ministry of Works and Transport, and I think that's where the rubber would have hit the road literally. Because as you can hear, Mzee Lalani and his outfits believe, yes, the cost of transportation of their raw materials from the port into the hinterland is extremely high. But they're also fully aware that the absence of the requisite internal infrastructure to move the raw materials from where they would be mined into their facility would also hamper their high investment. And so it's a catch-21. But what does it all say? It says that government should be indeed be the enabler to create a conducive environment everywhere you look at it for industrialists such as him. Mr. Lalani allowed a question from the audience. I do not want to assume that I know what it is that you want to ask him, so I am going to allow a maximum of 2 questions because I have a hard stop to this conversation at exactly 2 p.m. because you don't want to be where I am standing. I have the opportunity of looking at all your faces, and if what I see on your faces is going to determine whether or not I go to heaven, I may as well start booking the hottest part of hell because you are not looking at me kindly. So I need to redeem myself so that I am able to go to heaven and meet my namesake, St. Peter, and not end up elsewhere. So who is going to go first for their question? Oh, yes. And I am glad it's a lady. Can someone move the microphone to that lady over there? You introduce yourself and very quickly ask your question. Please stand up so that the microphone mover is able to see you. But if they are delaying, I don't have exclusivity at this podium. Please come and ask the question from here. And if you are next to ask the question, please you also come so that you take the advantage of standing at the podium. Sebo Tambu Delete.
Thank you so much, Simon. My name is Agnes Namaganda, and I'm from Maganjo. We are manufacturing life jackets in Maganjo. So my question is to, first of all, the Assistant Commissioner in the Ministry of. The question is, it's about the quality of electricity that we are having, or the quality of energy. In his submission, he said that we have a growing demand for the energy, and he also said that we have a challenge with the quality of infrastructure that Umeme has right now. But the question is, could there be infrastructure that Umeme left with to explain the decline in the quality of electricity? Because where we are, for example, in Maganjo, where we're manufacturing life jackets, the quality of energy is really affecting. It has drastically affected, ever since Umeme left, it has drastically affected it has drastically affected our services. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I haven't asked Mr. Lalani. Someone else maybe.
Thank you very much. So, you have been given a lifetime opportunity to ask Mr. Lalani a question, and you choose not to and ask the man from Ministry of Energy to tell us whether indeed when Umeme left, they left with some transformers and wires, because in Maganjo things are so bad. I will take the opportunity to say I have a bit of knowledge in the energy sector, having worked in electricity generation and at a very senior level, to say that what we saw happen, the transition between Umeme and UEDCL, it was removing a logo of Umeme and replacing it with the logo of UEDCL on the same spot, because Umeme had, let's say, 1,000 employees, and all of them, without exception, were Ugandans. The only person I know for sure who lost their job in Umeme was the CEO, because there could not have been 2 CEOs at UEDCL, because UEDCL already had a CEO. But all the others in the rank and file remained in there because they already had the human resource. And in fact, the transition of Umeme to UEDCL had already been done in practice by an earlier transition in the generation space, where Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited took over the operations of Eskom Uganda Limited by way of assuming the logo away of Eskom and putting the logo of UEGCL. And the only person that lost a job at Eskom was the managing director, Toza Magangi, who happened to be South African, from where Eskom came from. The rest were Ugandans. They remained at their workstations and continued doing what they are doing. What Emmanuel was talking about are that Umeme in itself was also grappling with an old system, needed more financing to invest in, and that's what they are grappling with as a government agency, and hopefully this will be rebuilt sooner than usual. They take cognizance of that and are aware of it. A last one, which we saw in today's media, and I'm sorry, I'm now acting more like a panelist as opposed to a moderator, and that's sometimes the price you pay for having a moderator that is slightly more knowledgeable than moderation. There's the element of vandalism, of infrastructure meant for the public good. When we as citizens start to vandalize installations such as high voltage power lines, we start vandalizing transformers to get transformer oil for you know what. When we start stealing solid cables to make hangers and melt those aluminium high voltage power lines to make saucepans, that in itself is self-defeating, and we will get what we are seeing today. Because when you vandalize a line, government will have to go back to look for the money to replace the item that you vandalized. That's why some people, in fact, are proposing that vandalism of infrastructure of that nature should be included on the crimes that make it to treason. Because when you vandalize an installation meant for national development, you are as good as someone saying the government should fall. Emmanuel, I will send you my invoice for answering that question on your behalf. And I don't want us to spend more time on it. Who has the question for Lalani? And we go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Protocol observed. I am Solomon from Dokoro Distributors, Atom, a small SMA. I was just impressed to hear from a senior investor, Lelani. I never knew such an investment was belonging to you. Thank you so much for building our country, Uganda, and investing in our country. I would request you to tell us of the challenges. How have you come up to mitigate or come up with sincere solutions of how to come up with the reality? There are some things I've been trying to jot down on request, that at such a time as fellow Ugandans, when you say the government, I feel we're the government of today, being into privatization. I was thinking of a mind, dear presenters and everybody, this is a time we could at least develop elders of a country and the senior elders in every department, that we could put together people with a brain to see focus higher into our country, Uganda, so far. I was looking at it in the way, like my brother was saying, that when there was a transit in the UD cell to where we are, I have evidence that one of the senior engineers.
Mzee Lalani is of advanced age, and no offense. He would appreciate a concise and precise question that then he can answer. So what is the question?
My concern was, how have you come up with a sincere plan, if possible, quick plan, to mitigate the solution of having our iron being explored? You said it may not take a short time, but it's as if we're a little bit late with the development. I was in Congo. I came with the stones which are magnetic, expecting that I've discovered something new. When I went into a lab in Uganda, I was told that it is very expensive to have this iron ore made. So it is made for cheaper to get the scrap, then get the iron because of power. So still the problem is the power. But as a senior investor, I expect you to have a solution. It may not be a solution from your company, but an idea of how we can run very fast to meet the challenge. Thank you.
All right, Mzee Lalani, quickly. We can use this microphone.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about. You know, these are not simple projects to put up in the country. These are, we have to go into the details, we have to study the project, and we need people with experience, like Japanese and all, they got the experience over centuries in exploitation and in the use of iron ore for different products. And this is exactly what we are doing. I mean, it's not from one day to next day that we can put up, the facilities to develop the iron ore. But we are looking into it and we are studying it, and as fast as possible, we'll go into this project, into the investment, and inshallah, one day we'll have our own iron ore here in Uganda. But it's a process. It's not just thinking and doing it. We need a lot of technology, a lot of information, a lot of studies before going into the project. And of course, we need a lot of finance. I think the government has to come with us. The government has to finance, partially the project and all. And one thing I want to make my commitment that I've been in this country. Okay, I'm born in Uganda. I'm a Ugandan. I'm born in Zambia Hospital. I came back to Uganda in 1994 when there was a problem in Rwanda, the genocide in Rwanda. And 32 years I've been here. We are working closely with all government departments, and we are here because of the collaboration and because of the interest of the government into developing the country. We are interested, government is interested, and we would like to thank the government for all the steps they've taken. Now, for example, this Namamwe Industrial Park in 2009, we were the first ones to go in the park. There was nothing in this park. It was a forest reserve, the park. His Excellency the President, he says, Lalani, you go forward, we'll follow. And today, after 16 years, there is no place in Namamwe for development. There is a huge investment in Namamwe Industrial Court. So one thing, we thank the government for all the help and all the integration, all the collaboration which we are having. And this is a big example of private sector and government working together to improve on all the infrastructure necessary for the development of the country.
Thank you very much. I think he has answered it very well, and my takeaway would be that Lalani will see an opportunity in every problem. Me, Simon, will see a problem in every opportunity. And that makes the difference between the two of us. So if I must be like him, I must look for an opportunity in every problem. Stuart, did you want to ask a question?
Simon, thank you very much, and all the panelists. I just wanted to add that this conference has been a very big milestone for Africa, and as well in the process of marketing Uganda. I'm sure with Chairman's permission, if you can squeeze some time together with the visitors, we can accommodate a number of people to come and actually see what's happening in the industrial park, especially in Namamve, but most of all, to look at what Roofings has done in that park and in Uganda. You are most welcome. I'm requesting the chair of the UDC board, together with your management, the EDs here, please, let's get a few of our guests and take them to Namamve and they see for themselves. I hear seeing is believing. It is a good marketing tool for Uganda and for Roofings as well. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've had the offer from Roofing saying that one, come and visit, come and see for yourself. What Laran is talking about, 16 years ago, he went to ground zero. It was a former forest reserve. Those who know Uganda's dark history, when people got lost in Kampala, their bodies were normally found dumped in Namanve. But today, when you're looking for what's not being put on the shelves of our supermarkets and on our hardware stores, you will find it in Namanve being manufactured there. So it's a tremendous shift of land use. That said, my dear panelists, I think let's be fair to ourselves and agree that we have served justice to this conversation. Let us stand over here and ask the chairperson of UDC to join you together with his management for a group picture. It's important that we have this group picture, so please, let's stand over here. Mr. Chairman of UDC and the Executive Director, come and join the panel. It's important. And after that, I will invite Mrs. Jacqueline Aneitwe Makaru, a board member of UDC, to come and show appreciation in the best way you know how from the Uganda Development Corporation. Mr. Chairman and Mr. CEO, please, the group picture. Don't worry about the rest. The camera people, you may wish to signal to your people on where to stand. Otherwise, my angle is different from yours, so. Photography is an art, so don't feel tired by the direction of the camera people. We need to get the best out of them. So Mrs. Jacqueline Aneitwe Makaru, where are you? Please step forward and present our thanks to this distinguished panel. I hope you remember who the panel